Welcome to Flashpoint, the Fire Inside podcast, featuring leadership and team building principles designed to ignite your inner fire. Now your host, international speaker and best-selling author, Frank Viscuso.
We are here with Deputy Chief Mike Terpak, and I'm going to tell you why I'm so excited about this, because I'm going to date both of us right now, Chief. But 1991, I attend the academy. You are my academy instructor. You're a firefighter at the time from Jersey City. We honestly looked at you. I'm not even joking about this. We looked at you like you were larger than life, because you just had this thing like, hey, this is what we're trying to become. This guy that understands what we're up against. And I'm going to tell you something before I get into asking you questions, because I found this to be one of the most awesome things ever, is what you posted yesterday. And this is what you posted on your Mike Terpak Fire Service Training and Consulting page. You posted standpipe operations. It is a great idea to put an inline gate valve onto the riser. Think about it. The riser valve probably hasn't been opened in years. When you need to quickly flow your hose line and set your operating pressure, this valve makes it easier. Lessons I learned from H-Rock, Pensacola, Florida. This is why I love it. Because 1991, the very first talk you gave to us as recruits was never stop learning. And you're still learning now.
When I wrote that yesterday, I just wrote it from, it's the truth. I was just down there, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. And, I don't have to tell you, we have a great friend down in Pensacola, County Fire Tactics, and you and I are always back and forth doing some work down there. And Kurt Isaacson, obviously, is the name. And I tell you, I've been invited. I think this is my third time at H-Rock, the High Rise Operations Conference, and they have so many talented people that come in to do these programs. And every time I'm there, whether it's H-Rock or COBC, Command Officer Boot Camp, actually, and Frank, to your point, anywhere, I am still, Googling, writing notes. And I picked up on a great tip last year, and I go, this is so valuable. It's simple, but it makes great sense. I'm gonna tell people about it when we talk about high rise. And yeah, you're right. I'm gonna be, I hate to say my age, but you opened the door here. You started this. I'm gonna be 61 in a couple weeks, and I love what I do, and I'm still learning. And that's evident from what you've just obviously quoted out there. Yeah, great. I didn't think about it until you just read it back to me.
Well, because I said, well, that's the guy I learned from. And you said that the day you stop learning is the day you need to leave the fire service, because that's when you're going to get yourself or somebody hurt or killed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that I can go back 30 years plus, and I can think about lessons I learned from you when I'm just starting my career out. And so this is why I'm excited to have you on this podcast, because you're a friend today, but my entire career, you've been a mentor. And obviously, my father's a firefighter, my brother's a firefighter, and they've been incredible influences for me in my life. You are, without question, the number one professional influence in my life, because you've helped me understand the job when I first got on. You've helped me get promoted. I think anybody that doesn't take their promotional lessons from you is making a mistake, because I've learned more from taking your classes, reading your books, and just listening to you speak at seminars than anywhere else. And then just even into speaking and writing books. I mean, my first tactical book through Penwell at the time, which is now Clarion Fire Engineering Books and Videos, was Fireground Operational Guides with you.
Yes.
So
I'm actually looking at a copy right here as we're talking of our book. Yes.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but if you don't mind, for everybody listening to this that may not be familiar with Deputy Chief Mike Terpak, and talk about your background. I mean, you were a volunteer firefighter. What drew you to the fire service? What was the appeal?
Well, let me just jump in before I talk about me. Let me say this. I mean, you're very kind to me. You've always been a great friend. Again, we've known each other for years, but let me just return the favor, because when I know you're hosting this, but let me just say this to your listeners, and I know you have quite a few listeners all around the world. This guy here on the other side of the screen, this guy, Frank Viscuso, let me tell you, I'm honored, one, to say I'm a friend of yours, because I've seen you come from Proby school, stretching a line with the mask on, a little kid, with your brother Joe, another great guy, of course, and what you have achieved and how you have taken the concept of leadership and molded it, and I think have changed the way many people absorb that understanding of how to be the person, to step up and lead and everything you've done there. I'm in awe of what you do. I mean that honestly. And every time people come up to me, I say, listen, you want to have somebody take things and bring it into, what I would say kind of like easily and understandable but measurable terms quickly. They have to talk to you. So I know you kind of put me on a pedestal, and that's not me. I'm not as great as you make me out to be, but let me tell you, as I return the compliment, it's an honor to be with you. I mean that sincerely. Now let's talk about me now. Now it's all about me.
Enough of you. Let's talk about me.
Enough of you. I'm done. I got to finish. Okay.
Well, let's do that, because you're that classic kid that chased the fire engines on your bicycle, right?
Yeah. Like probably many of the people that you do talk to over the years who have the same passion and motivation that you have and I have. We started, whether it was from family, brothers or fathers, or similar type situations, and I was one of them. My dad, I was initially born in Carbondale, Pennsylvania, outside of Scranton, and my dad was, and I didn't know this until much later, to be quite honest with you, he was a volunteer fireman in Mayfield, PA. I didn't know until I became a volunteer fireman here in New Jersey. When he gave me his badge and he told me a couple stories, and I said, you never told me this. 16 years I'm on this earth. You never told me that story. So we would share a few things, and I knew that I had it from him in some way, shape, or form. So at the age of 16, yes, I joined the local volunteer fire department. And, once I started to get in the firehouse and they let me do some things as a young kid, I said to myself, I'm hooked. And I said, I got to figure out how to do this and make a living out of it. And then it moved on a little bit further. I became an auxiliary firefighter. I don't remember. Well, I started in 1976 now, again, to show my age. 1978, I think it was, I became an auxiliary firefighter. They had a program in Newark, New Jersey, where you can pretty much, ride, and assist the fire department or the companies, but in an auxiliary format, meaning you really couldn't get too involved on the inside of the structure. And a great department, very, it was just very motivating to me. And that was kind of put the icing on the cake, where I said to myself, I want to do this for a living. And that's how Jersey City came about. I took the test in the 80s, early 80s, got hired in 81, and spent 36 years there. And had a great time, met a lot of great people, a lot of good experience during that time frame when we had some good work back in the 80s and 90s. And I'm still, friendly with many of them today. I'm retired now. I was saying this to somebody today. I'm going to be retired 4 years in May. I can't believe it. It's gone that quickly. But yeah, it flew by. It really did fly by. But again, 36 years at Jersey City, 44 plus years overall. And I'm, as you pointed out, I'm still learning.
Yeah, which is the best part about it all. And, you're a very busy department. Talk a little bit about Jersey City, how many members and about the size of it. So again, so people on the other side of the country have a better understanding of it.
Yeah, a great question. Unless you're from the Northeast, probably many of your listeners don't know much about us. We're right across the river from Lower Manhattan, World Trade Center, Holland Tunnel, Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island. And we have probably makes us a little bit more unique than some. And obviously you being from Hudson County, I know you can relate to this. About 300,000 people on about 14 buildable square miles. So that makes us pretty densely populated. In Hudson County, where you and I are both from, I believe, I'm sure people can check this in Google if they want to test me. I think Hudson County, New Jersey, is probably the most densely populated county per square mile in the United States. So a lot of people packed into where I'm from and where you're from, and making things a little bit more challenging. When I started in 1981, I believe we had about 800 firefighters in the street. That number has fluctuated quite a bit over my tenure. I believe the current number is around 670 people operating in the city. EMS is a separate entity, more of a private contractor, even though the fire department does do some EMS work. But I think now roughly 670, 675 firefighters handling 300,000 residents, that is, in about 14 square miles in that area that I pointed out.
And in that time and in your career, like anybody else that's been through a career where you've seen it all, obviously, you've also seen some of the best firefighters come through, and you've seen some maybe not so great firefighters come through, like we all have in fire, like any other profession. But what I wanted to talk to you about, one of the things, is what makes a great firefighter. And we already started off with the whole idea of never stop learning. Like you've never arrived. For example, I've heard you say things, even in the academy and in classes, I've heard you say things like, I remember you saying this years ago, I don't know if you even still say this, is there's two ways to put out a fire. You out resource it or you outthink it.
Yeah.
And right there, that comes down to, again, educate yourself. You need to be an educated firefighter. But what are some of the other things that you would say make a great firefighter?
Well, great question. It's funny. I was talking about this the other day with a couple of people when I was down at the high-rise conference. Same question, but just presented differently. One of the things that quickly comes to mind that I said the other day, and I'll say it to you, and I know you're going to be right in tune to my thought process. It's a passion. It really is. We have to, when I look at this job, I don't look at it as a job. I look at it as like a calling, something that I was meant to do, where, you're the first one in and you're the last one to leave. When the end of the evening, when the meal is, cleaned up, the food is put away, the dishes are done, those few people who are back out on the apparatus floor at 8 or 9 o'clock, looking to open up another compartment, or maybe taking a tool out and just cleaning it one more time, just getting ready for the next run before that run comes in. Passion, motivation, dedication, and you see it pretty early on. I mean, you could pick these people out of the lineup, in the academy, and the type of people over the years that I would gravitate towards. I would wrap my arms around and say, listen, I want you to work on my shift, or I want you to work on my battalion. I would often have the training division guys say, listen, I got a list of people for you that you're going to love. We're going to send them towards you because we know that you and your people, me and my people, but the people I had the opportunity to work with are going to take them and make them better than they are. You're going to make them great. They're going to be the future leaders of the job. And I would say, give me all of them. But I also would say like this, give me some people out of the academy who you think need to just be encouraged or motivated a little bit further. Maybe they're on the fence a little bit. Maybe they're unsure. Maybe they had a tough time in the academy. Maybe they were teased a little bit. Maybe they're a little bit lighter regarding, weight and strength. I go, give me them too. I said, give me a mixed bag of everybody, and I'll sister them up with people who could mentor them and move them along and make them good too. So I never picked certain people. I said, I want people that you think that need to be helped a little bit, people that are already there, and let me dovetail them together if I can.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because you're essentially, you just talked about mentorship. And one of the things you just said is something that I always found real valuable as a deputy chief is we implemented a very informal mentorship program. We would take a brand new firefighter, we'd link them up with someone who had the passion, first and foremost, that you just talked about. They had a great attitude, gave a great effort all the time. They were in tune. They wanted to learn. They were part of the solution instead of the problem that we sometimes see in a fire service, which could be summed up in words like complacency.
True.
And I'd walk out of my apparatus floor sometimes 7, 8 at night. We would train for minimum 3 hours a day. You have a busy day. You're doing reports. You're taking care of your station and everything. So at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, it's understandable if they have their own time to do their own thing. And then I would see them on the apparatus floor, the mentor, the person I assigned as for them to mentor, with a piece of equipment, going over the tool, maybe doing their own drill. And sometimes I go down and they'd all be down there. Sometimes it's just a couple of them. But one of the things that I love to do was bring attention to that moment and say, hey, I'm really proud of you guys right now. I love what I'm seeing here. What you're showing me exactly what I want to see in you and more of in general in the fire service. So don't stop doing this.
Yeah.
And of course, when you praise in public, you tend to get more of the same of that kind of activity as compared to just ignoring it or not bringing attention to it. And I wanted to just kind of touch on that a little bit because you talked about that years ago. And I think you'll remember this, but you and I were sitting down and we were having lunch somewhere and we were talking about things we wish people told us. I think we were at Kane University. I think we just spoke there at a conference with Vincent Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having lunch and we said, these are things that we wish we knew when we got on the job. And then we said, well, let's make a list of these things. We came out with 25 things that every probationary firefighter should know and do. And we wrote that list out, and there's a paragraph under each one, like leave your ego at the door. Don't try to force acceptance. Be the first to arrive, the last to leave, all this stuff. And I can't even tell you how many places I go throughout the country to speak, and I see that hanging in places like the kitchen or the deputy's office, and people bring attention to that article. Anyone can find it. You can Google it.
Right.
But that's, again, that's about passing on the information that you already know. But do you remember that conversation when we had that conversation?
I absolutely do. I mean, we haven't talked about it in years. I remember talking about the list, and I remember I actually saw a list similar to ours, maybe not as in depth and not as, broken down and clarified to the detail that we eventually got it to. That kind of motivated me. And I'll tell you a quick story regarding that. When I first got promoted to deputy, years ago, of course, I was a deputy chief and I worked in the training division in Jersey City for about 18 months before I got out into the street. And I remember finding like 5 little things. Well, we had 25, of course. And I remember posting similar to what you just said on the bulletin board outside my office. So recruits would come in, they'd be standing outside the office. They'd be talking to the secretary on whatever paperwork they needed to get done. And I always saw them all lining up and looking at, all the training bulletins we would post. Maybe there'd be an article about a recent fire, and they would always look at that little list. And I always kept that in my mind. And then when I sat down with you and we started, with a cup of coffee, the list went from 5 to 15 to 20 to 25. And I haven't seen it in a while. I mean, I know we did it. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
But the few times that people did come up to me when they saw it, I think after it was published, I think maybe you might have put it out there. The compliments were there. And my only response when it was, well, it was already out there. We just took it and we just kind of put a little bit, we just kind of put a little more water in the plant and, help to fertilize it a little bit. And I said I forget who it was where I was teaching. I said, listen, take it. It's 25, add 5 more.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody else and let them add 5 more. And I said, make it your own too, personalize it to your own environment, personalize it to your own backyard. But yeah, I remember that conversation. I remember teaching with Vinny Dunn. That was a great day. And I remember the list. I haven't talked about it in a while, but I do remember the list.
In the book, in Fireground Operation Guides, I was just looking at it as you were talking. That was published in 2011, and it's in there. It's on a disc in that book. It's because I think we have 70 operational guides in that book. I actually do want to talk about this, how this came about in a moment, but there was a bonus operational guide on the disc itself that comes in, and that's it.
Yep.
So it was sometime around that time that we made that list. And you always said that, take this, make it your own, put your own spin on it. Just another tool in your toolbox. I think I know every Terpak phrase and I've used them all. You mentioned a moment ago, you said the word promotion, and you are very passionate about helping people get promoted. Now, I will tell you, there's some work that I've put out, Step Up and Lead's an example, where I never expected Step Up and Lead to be put on lists for promotional exams, because I was used to books like Fire Officer's Handbook of Tactics, and of course your books, Fireground Size Up. So when you're filling out that questionnaire for the publisher, one of the questions that they ask you is, would this book be something used for promotional exams? I wrote no, because I just didn't think it would. And that book's used all over the country for promotional exams now. And so I will have people come up to me and say, hey, thank you for that. That really helped me get promoted.
Yep.
And it feels good, a complete stranger. And I'm thinking, it must be really good for you with promotional prep and what you do with your team there. What led to you getting into the whole promotional arena as an instructor?
Oh, God, that goes back quite a few years. it came from, again, I'll use the word passion of, trying to learn and be a better firefighter. I mean, more about me being in the street, the educational side. And I've said this a few times in a couple of interviews. I remember writing a series of like little notebooks on, a private dwelling fire, and then adding to a private dwelling notebook, lessons learned, things that we did that went well, things that we did that didn't go well. And I would write sometimes the date, the address, maybe what influenced us at that incident, whether it was the weather, where it was a hoarding condition. And then I would go and add another notebook. I had a notebook on multiple dwellings. We had a fire in a multiple dwelling yesterday. I would write a couple little notes on, the challenges, the conversations the guys were having at the kitchen table. I would listen as a young kid. I did the same for churches. I did the same for brownstones. I did the same for taxpayers. And lo and behold, I had these little notebooks that were originally meant to help me be better educated on understanding what we needed to do and learn from what we did that didn't go well, educational wise. And then when the promotional exams would come out, I said, you know what? They had a book list, and I was looking at the book list. I said, I'm going to read some of those books and see how that dovetails in with some of my notes I took from the street. Then I would read, like a Vinnie Dunn book, of course, a great friend of ours. John Norman book, another, great legend out of New York City. And then, Brannigan's books, Glenn Corbett's books. And I would start to add to my notes based on the academic side. Whatever I wrote from what I learned in the street, I would add now the academics, what these scholars were saying regarding building construction, location, and extent type things. And what it did is it allowed me to get better prepared for the promotional exam. And I think it made a difference. All I had to do now is pretty much take the stuff that I learned from the street. I had in notes, stuff that I learned from books, the academic side, put it upstairs here and be able to verbalize it, on the oral assessment side. And again, being a good student of this as well as a great teacher, meaning if you don't know it, it's not going to come out well. It's not going to sound well. You're not going to have that clarity. You're not going to have the conviction. You're not going to have the eye contact, the body language, in addition to the words on the oral assessment. It's simply either you know it or you don't. So I found value with that. I said, I'm reading things, I'm writing things, I'm experiencing things that I'm hopefully going to make me a better boss someday. But the avenue in order to get there was I got to play the oral assessment game. And I found it, I don't want to say I found it easy, but I found a way to be able to talk about things, answer questions. And what helped me is knowing what you're talking about before you get challenged or questioned on it. So the notebook, the concept, the reading, all that kind of put together a nice, package or a bow or a box, whatever you want to call it. So when someone asked me, I would challenge myself. I go, give me a fire on a church. Ask me anything about a church. And I would joke to myself. I go, I burned down more churches than anybody I know. But it was kind of like I wanted to be prepared when I got the responsibility or the rank. But in order to get there, I had to be able to verbalize what I knew about it based on the question design in the test format.
And it's okay that you burned down a couple churches because Jersey City needs some parking lots anyway.
Yeah. Well, just a few, not many, just a few.
I'm joking now. Well, that's one of the things you did is you take these complex topics of how to fight fires in churches, brownstones, and all these different things, and you provide a format, a system, a way to kind of take somebody through that, because our promotional exam here in New Jersey, and everybody has their own way. Sometimes it's just an interview with your chief of your department or your mayor. For us, it's a civil service exam. And for deputy chief, for example, it's a fire incident, a non-fire incident, a administrative, and a supervision. And I don't even know if they still do that now, but that's what it was when I was being tested. And I learned from you. And I'll tell you one thing that I did also is about 45 days before my test. And I know I have 10 minutes to read this scenario. I have 10 minutes to prepare it and read and prepare it. And then 10 minutes to actually sit down with this panel of experts and give my answer. 45 days before taking that test, I took the test every single day. And I took it at my house in front of nobody. Sometimes I would do it with some guys I was studying with, sometimes my brother, sometimes my good friend Johnny Harris. There was one time I remember calling you up saying, hey, is there any chance I can come run some scenarios with you? And it was great. You were on duty. I was just getting off duty. You said, come on over. I come over to Jersey City that night and I walk in, and I'm going to just tell you this on a personal note. When I walked in, the thing that I loved the most was walking in your office and seeing that you had a picture of your wife and the picture of your daughters clipped onto your light. Mm-hmm. And I brought attention to that. And I said, I love that you do that. And I think what you do is you had a briefcase and the pictures were in there. And when you came to work, you opened it up and then you clipped them so you could see them every day. And I'm like, there's a guy that has his priorities in order, perspective. So my mind quickly went off of the whole promotional thing. And it went back to that whole, this guy's a good mentor. He's a great leader in the fire service. He's a great educator. He's passionate about the job, but he's got his priorities in order too, because he's shown me what's important. And I think that that's something that you also valued with your members. You wanted them to know that their families were important to you too, the people you were leading. That's a good leadership right there. And I don't know if I ever told you that, but I wanted to bring attention to that.
Honestly, I don't think you ever did. And ironically, that same briefcase is sitting right over here on the right side of my desk, and the same pictures. Obviously, they're a little bit more updated. The girls have grown up a little bit now, of course. They're still in that briefcase, and I use the briefcase. I mean, it's embarrassing to look at. It's a little ratty, but I still use it, of course. But yeah, no, you never told me that. I not that I forgot about the pictures, but no one ever pointed that out to me before. But thank you for that. Yes.
Because, I think I started doing that after I became a deputy chief, because I remember I had my book that I used to carry around with me, with my staffing information in it. And one of the pages, I had pictures of my family clipped in there, that because it's that important. Every now and then you have to open it up. You're having a tough day, a challenging fire, whatever it may be. I like to just open it up when I'm at work, look at that, and it reminds me of why I do what I do. It's not a stress-free, easy job. And on that note, I want to actually talk about people in leadership positions, because this is the greatest job on earth. We hit the lottery when you become a firefighter. You really do. You hit the lottery. At the same time, something that could make a great job not so great is if you have to work in a challenging environment, because some people create unnecessary stress on a job that's already could be stressful. We talked about what makes a great firefighter. Well, how about an officer? What do you put on that list where you say, these are great qualities of an officer? For me, for example, like on top of the list is trust. That's an important one. And somebody who knows their job, obviously, because those are passionate. But do you have anything else you put on the list?
Well, I would say trust. I would say, be fair, right down the middle of the pipe, if I can use that as an association. But at the same time, there's going to be times where, you got to be firm. You're not going to be everybody's buddy.
Yep.
Of course, we will always love the most passionate, most motivated person to come out of the academy, and that makes your job easier. But, you're going to get the challenged person. You're going to get the person that questions things. Either if it's somebody underneath you, a subordinate, or sometimes I've had people above me, that maybe I didn't agree with policy or procedure. I had some challenges over the years, especially when I got up there in rank, in seniority, dealing with some of the, I say this tongue in cheek, shirts and ties on, precisions on, I couldn't, as a tour commander, I had the authority to, hire overtime if I had an opening, and I would get challenged on, you close the company. I said, I need one guy. I said, just give me one guy. And, to go fight those battles every day when I'm saying, what one company could do as compared to closing and putting a hole there. So it's, fairness, firmness, and at the same time, trust. There's no doubt about it. And, not that you go out of your way to seek these things. Either you have them or you don't. And, and when somebody comes up and compliments you or thanks you or shakes your hand, sometimes you'd be like, well, why? What did I do? And they mention these things to you, and you say, well, no, that's just what I was born into. That's the people that I followed over the years, and I'm just, following their example. And if I can, at the end of the day, and I would say this quite a bit when I had somebody that would challenge me. I would say, listen, I'm here for one reason, all right, just to get you back home to the family. Be part of the team. I need you to fix A, B, and C for me. And at the end of the day, if you can't fix these things, we're going to have to talk about maybe finding you something else to do. Sometimes I would have to go that route. But more times than not, when I brought up family and what this is all about, the fire department family, and then your own family, and what we're trying to do in the mission statement, we can go that way for a second. I said, think about all these little things. Think about the big picture here. And this play ball, step up. I'm taking your line, step up. All right. And, take on your area of responsibility. Because if you don't, eventually you and I are going to have a problem at some point. There's no doubt about it. I mean, this is I don't say business. I never say that this is a business. It's a profession. All right. It's different, in my opinion. A business is Amazon. A business is Google. All right. This is different. This is a profession. This is a calling. This is a passion. Either you're with us or we'll help you get there. We have a lot of places that we can help you get towards passion, motivation, mentoring. I'll get you part of the team, finding your skill set and bringing that to the forefront. We'll find that if you let us find that. But if you're looking to collect a paycheck, you're here for benefits. I'm going to weed you out. We're not going to get along at the end of the day. Your patience wears thin to a certain extent. But more times than not, I never had to go that route. A few times, of course, but the vast majority, it was just like, keep coming, keep joining the team. Come on over here. Love to have you. What do you think? Do we do well? What can we improve upon? Regardless of rank, I didn't make a difference. The kitchen table to me was rankless. It really was. What do you think? What do you think? I would have kids around 18 months. What do you think, Stevie? Well, Chief, and I go, Steve's talking right now, and we would pick something up all the time, regardless of rank and regardless of time on the job. Of course, your senior people would always offer more, their experience level, their academics, but we took off the shirts, so to speak, no bars on the collar, everybody round table on that difficult second alarm earlier today. And we all picked up something almost from everybody, almost every day.
I love that. I love that. The kitchen table is rankless. I actually love that. I never heard it say that way, but for me, that one of the terms that I often use is the best ideas have to win. And for those of us with maybe some gold on our collars and some gray hairs, we have to humble ourselves to know that the best ideas aren't always going to be ours.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you also with what you said. You have to bring passion to the table, and you can give someone the tools, the training, the resources, the time, the support, everything they need to succeed, but they got to bring the heart. Yep. They have to come there and say, I want to be here. And it's an easy thing. Come to work knowing you have a good job and willing to give your best effort and with your best attitude. And that's the greatest job on earth. Oftentimes you travel throughout the country like I do, you walk into firehouses and you can tell when it's a great culture and when it's not a great culture right off the bat, meaning if it's a good working environment or not a good working environment, just based on how the attitude of the first few people you meet.
Absolutely.
And I love that. So I want to get to, we brought it up a couple of times, fireground operational cards. I actually want to talk about that for a moment. And the reason I want to talk about it is going back again, probably about 2009. I want to talk about this, not to promote the book as much as to give people some hope that are interested in writing a book one day. And here's why. Number one is I wanted to write books, obviously. And now I have 7, but I still remember writing my first book with 2 fingers and my thumb as the space bar, which was good for me because it allowed my brain to keep up with my fingers. And Fireground Operational Guide, you and I had a conversation. We didn't have a name for it, but we said, what if we took these really study templates / SOP templates / field guides, because they can be used for all of that, and just put this book together saying, here's the things you have to do at a high-rise fire. Here's the things you have to do at an electrical emergency. Here's the things you have to do at a water main break. Here's the things you have to do at a dumpster fire. Here's the things you have to do at a carbon monoxide investigation. You go on and on and on. There's 70 in there and a universal tactical worksheet. So we had conversations about this, and we approached our publisher at the time. And you were an author with them already. I was not an author with them. I had a book, but not through them. So I was an unknown. And by the way, thank you, by the way, for even putting enough confidence in me to want to team up with me, because you were already there. And what you did for me is you opened up a door that I didn't know how to open up by myself. And
but let me jump in there. The operational guide concept, that was yours. You came to me with that. I remember you reaching out to me, whether it was a phone call or I saw you on an event, and you came up with this idea, and which sparked my thought to say, wow, we got something here. Is a few minutes ago, I mentioned to you, I had all these little notes and notebooks on private dwelling or multiple dwellings, or, the strip mall. And you kind of said to me, Mike, take those, let's just put them in like a nice format from en route to arrival, all the way up to running the incident determination. And you said, I got all these things that you already worked on. I go, wait a minute, this sounds too good to be true. Yeah. So the compliment has to go back to you. This was your baby. I just hung on your coattail. And I think we did a pretty good job with that. It came out pretty cool.
Well, it's a great book. But we put a disc in there.
Yeah.
And a disc you could put on your computer, you could download it on your computer, and I sent it to my phone. And I actually would open up that, like a water main break's a perfect example. We've had a few water main breaks in there, and I brought up the operational guide for water main breaks to make sure that I was covering everything, because when the mind when you're actively and that's not a high pressure incident. It could be a stressful incident. I never found a water main break to be a stressful incident, but there's a lot that you need to do to make sure that the scene is safe. But there's two things you need for your mind to work the way that it would work in a calm, relaxed environment. And that's either peer support or a memory support tool. And I used these memory support tools. One of the guys I worked with, who was another deputy chief, had the book. He carried the book in the car with him. I printed all the operational guides out. I had them in a folder, and I had them on my phone. But here's the thing that I want to give hope to for people that say, because I know a lot of people like you do that want to write a book. We went to the publisher. They said, yeah, we want it. And I remember we must have had a dozen conversations between you and me while we were writing the book saying, well, they haven't sent the contract yet. Maybe they changed their mind. And I do remember specifically saying, you know what, let's just write the book anyway. And if they choose not to want it, we'll just bring it to somebody else, like their competitor, and we'll get it, because we know we have something good. We ended up writing the book, and obviously, they did publish it, and it did quite well. But I know a lot of people use that as templates for 70 different SOPs for their organization.
Yeah, and probably one of the best ideas, and again, I'll compliment you again on this one, was the desk. I've talked to people who have used it, and I've seen throughout the travels, they say, we just took the desk, we took what you guys had, and we just kind of formulated and put our name on top. Is that okay? I go, is that okay? I said, that was the entire intent behind this. Take that, download it, and make it your own. We don't care what name you put out. That's not what we're here for. We're here just to kind of, share a thought or idea, a concern, and make it your own. And the disc, I think, was probably one of the most complimentary things out of the entire book, that they could take it, put it into the computer, and they had something that they could add to right away.
Yeah. There's a story I never told you, by the way, and I'm actually really glad that this just popped into my head, because when the book was published, it gets released at FDIC. So it's a good idea that we put in for a class for FDIC. So we put in for a class together. We go down and we teach this class on fireground operational guides. And, specifically I talked about the universal tactical worksheet. You talked about a specific guide in there. I think it was taxpayers. I don't remember what it was.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, at the time, I feel like a little league baseball player that's just snuck into a MLB All-Star game, and no one figured out I don't belong there. Okay. I'm teaching with Mike Terpak at FDIC. This is, by the way, the first time I've attended FDIC, and I'm teaching right next to you. I've attended conferences. This is my first time here. So then the reviews come out. The reviews for Terpak were great. The reviews for me, not so great. And I sat here and said, oh my God, I might have just destroyed this guy's career. So I'm at the airport the next day. Okay. And I'm thinking about a couple of those reviews. And I'm thinking, I really wasn't as prepared as I should have been. I should have been teaching about, even though I wrote the book with you on this, I shouldn't have been teaching about this. What I'm passionate about is leadership and team development. What I think I'm good at is that, because of all the different areas of my life, between business, sports, fire service. It's what I've always been passionate about. I've failed at it as much as I've succeeded, which made me feel like I'm equipped to talk about that too, of what not to do. So here I am at the airport, waiting to go home, thinking to myself, in 1 minute, I'm never going to put in a teach at FDIC again, man, because they were brutally honest with me. And then the very next minute, I said, no, I'm going to put in to teach again. Matter of fact, I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to write another book, but I'm going to write a book about leadership. So reviews that weren't that favorable for me, actually, I turned them around into what ultimately ended up becoming Step Up and Lead. Yeah. Now I go to FDIC, and I've not had anything but a sold out class since we started doing that class down there. And the reviews, when I read the reviews, I'm like, it's humbling. But when I mean, in a good way, and when I see new people that are there reading their reviews, because if you don't know this, speakers at FDIC have, they want you to go read your reviews. When you read your reviews, they take them from the box that they were in and they move them to another one just to signify that you came to read them. They want you to do that. I see new instructors all the time reading their reviews, having the same look on their face that I had my first year. I go over there, Chief. I go over there and I'm like, I put my arm around him and I go, brother, I've been there. And don't worry, they asked me to keynote 7 years later. There's light on the other side.
I'm going to reflect back. I remember us teaching the class. I don't remember reading any negative reviews. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that, you're from Jersey. You probably had a leisure suit on. You looked like one of the Sopranos. And it might have something to do with your dress. I'm not really sure. It had nothing to do, if I remember correctly, on content and how you presented to the audience. I mean, I don't remember that conversation in that depth. You might be taking it a little bit too far, because I thought we did a great job collectively together. I mean that.
Well, in retrospect, they really weren't that bad. They just felt that bad because at the time, this is my first time I'm teaching with you.
Okay.
And you are, I've said this, I've been around all over the country. Matter of fact, the education that I have in the fire service right now, just from traveling and meeting people. I was just with Lee Atchison down in Mont Belvieu, Texas. Man, this guy's a great leader. Spent a lot of time traveling the country, teaching himself with ISFSI. And just like you, we've met the best of the best. We've met people that are doing great things. We met organizations that are struggling because they have challenges with their leadership or with their firefighters or with their policies, procedures, SOPs, you name it. And I still say to this day that one of the things I wish I had was the opportunity to work under the command of Mike Terpak, because we were in the same area. We would, on occasion, Jersey City and Kearney, we do mutual aid at multiple alarm company fires and maybe major incidents. But when I say that you were a mentor of mine, I want people to understand this. I didn't work with you. You were a mentor of mine through me reading your books, through me attending your classes, and through me having the ability to be able to pick up the phone and call you and just say, hey, Chief, I just have a question for you. And you doing what you do, which was taking a time like you are right now to talk with me. And I've tried to model myself after that. I've tried to make myself accessible to every single person that picks up the phone. And in the fire service, that's one of the most beautiful things about it. And you said this a couple of times. We share information. This book, take it. It's yours. Use it the way you want. Print it out, make it yours. We've provided you with what we know. Don't just make it yours, make it better than what we gave you. So, and I kind of rambled there for a minute, and I apologize, but I just wanted to talk about that. And we're in a great profession where we share information, and people are accessible and there to help you if you're struggling with something and need to get through.
And And again, Frank, I mean, honestly, and I thank you for that. I mean, you're too kind. I mean, yeah, I'm so glad one we had the opportunity to meet, and you and I could talk about names of people that have influenced us over the years that continue to influence us. I mean, some great Jersey people. Like, how about Paul Dansbeck? Out of Rutherford, New Jersey. What another? I mean, another great friend and an icon. Dave McGrail out of Denver, Colorado. Todd Edwards out of Atlanta. Kurt Isaacs. Talk about a motivated guy. My God, Kurt.
Yeah.
If you can bottle that energy, you can light up the East Coast. So many great people. And I continue to meet people. Bobby Hoff from Chicago. Ron Cabrera from LA County. I was just on the phone with the other day talking about a couple other things. And of course, our great friend. Talk about an inspiration. And the gentleman, he's a couple of years older than me, but he's a machine, Vinny Dunn. I mean, think about Vinny Dunn, his career. I don't want to say his age, because I don't know exactly what it is, but I know he's got a couple of years, and the guy, he's still writing. He's on. I mean, the guy is.
He's on social media. He's posting stuff on Facebook. It's awesome.
Like every few days, and if I would call him or would send him something, DM him, and he'd be right back. With a very humbling gentleman, no attitude, no ego. One of us at this level, not up here. He talks street, and those people, and that gentleman in particular, motivates you to be like, to the point where you want to be like him. I said, how can I be like him? How can I be, to the extent that we could, as knowledgeable and experienced as him, but at the same time, take the lessons that he has shown us on how to talk to people at a seminar, or talk to people having a cup of coffee, or there's no lights on, there's no mic in front of you, or that kitchen table. I mean, come on, the kitchen table, to me, the apparatus floor. I mean, the amount of information that gets exchanged there, it's invaluable. When the bell rings and the tones go off, all right, that's when rank has to start to dictate policy, and there's responsibility. But prior to that, my God, it's, let the whole family, it's like, you and I being a little bit of the Italian side, here comes the Jersey again. It's like pasta on Sunday, that big table, and the conversation continues to go back and forth. The bell rings, right? Now we're moving in a different direction. But prior to the bell ringing, with the garlic bread coming out, and there's a lot of great information exchanged at that moment, at that time, and hopefully you're listening and wrapping your arms around it.
I think that most of the firefighters who retire, when you ask them, do you miss it? That's what they miss the most, the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And Sundays.
And Sundays. There was always a pot of sauce on Sundays in a firehouse.
Always. Oh, what's awesome. Yeah, you just made me remember something. Gosh, I don't even remember. I have something hanging up somewhere here, but it might have been like 1995 or something. I was the Hudson County Italian American Firefighter of the Year, right? And so they asked me to come over in Jersey City and march like with the Grand Marshal, with my little ribbon around my thing. And here I'm sitting there going, oh, this is crazy. I got a couple guys in my department walking over here, and I'm actually embarrassed. Like, how does this happen? So you pull up in an apparatus and you get on the mic and you go, hey, Viscuso, the only reason you got it is we don't have any Italian firefighters over here in Jersey City. I'm like, well, there you go.
We were mostly Irish, Irish back then, and still is for a great majority of the department. But yeah, you're right, and that's a big deal, being recognized by that group. Don't take that down. Yeah, that's something. And find that plaque and put it right behind you.
I know where it is. It's actually upstairs. I have another office upstairs, and I have a picture of me with all the good fellas from that day. And they really are a great group of guys. And speaking of Irish, okay, let's talk about this. Jimmy Burns.
Oh God.
Okay. God. Now, first of all, let me just tell you, Jimmy Burns, deputy chief, who I believe you replaced on your. Am I right about that?
He was. Oh my God, I haven't talked about Jimmy in such a long time. He was a battalion chief. We both worked in the 2nd Battalion, and when I would get off in the morning, he would relieve me. We were working the 24-hour shifts, and I would brief him in the morning on what we did throughout the 24-hour tour, the fires that we had, whatever crazy incidents we had, any inventory issues, apparatus, whatever it may be. And, he would relieve me at 7 o'clock in the morning, but the shift started at 8. I wouldn't leave that kitchen table to 9, 10, sometimes 11 o'clock, sometimes stay and have lunch, because the conversation with him, he sucked me in, and he was a senior member. I mean, he had quite a few years on me, but just listening to him, like if I told him we had a fire around the corner, it was in the top floor of a 3-story brick, and it got through the sheer joist pockets. He was starting to telling me a story about, I had another one around the corner in 1983. Let me tell you the chat. And it would just turn into a lesson. I mean, at the kitchen table, to the point where the guys would be coming in, having breakfast. The TV never went on, and they would just be sitting and listening to him tell a story. But I kind of like, being a commentator, asking questions. And the next thing I look at my watch is like, oh my God, it's 10:30. I've been off duty for 2.5 hours, but I'm still there learning from that gentleman. A great, great fire officer. A great guy.
And I worked with his son, Terry, and Terrence. And when Jimmy retired, Terry's like, you want to come to my dad's retirement party? I said, absolutely, I'd love to. So I go there, and a few of the firefighters that he worked with, I mean, a bunch of them obviously were there, but they got up to say a few words about him. I'll never forget it as long as I live, because these guys started off doing what firefighters do, just telling jokes and laughing about when Chief Burns did this and when Chief Burns did that. And then it got to a point where these guys were actually in tears because of how they felt about him and how sorry they were to actually see him leaving, because what he meant to them. And one of them said he wasn't always an easy guy to work for, because he demanded that and do your job, but you never doubted whether or not he cared for you. Like he took care of his members. And I never forgot that. I mean, I always strive to say, I hope that I can have some of the people I work with feel that way about me on the day that I leave. So, but I wanted to bring his name up. I actually was just through social media talking with his son the other day, but I'm going to have to show him this, that we were talking about his dad.
Oh my God, a great guy. I haven't talked about him in years, and actually you put a big smile on my face. A true mentor, and one of the probably most senior fire officers I've ever met on the job. Yeah, great guy. Great guy.
Without question. So, all right. Mikey Conlon.
Oh God, another great guy.
Right. Now, how great is Mikey Conlon? Now, for those of you that don't know Mikey Conlon, in my book, Common Valor, which featured true stories about New Jersey firefighters, I feature a story about you in the book. And matter of fact, that's my favorite story, because it puts us in a setting where we met, as if you're an academy instructor and you have these young students asking you're teaching them lessons. And so you teach 3 lessons in this story, which were incidents that you actually went through. But then after that, you said, hey, you really need to interview Mikey Conlon. And I said, if anybody has 9 lives, it's Mikey Conlon.
Oh my God, unbelievable.
This he's been electrocuted, burned. He's been sent to the burn center. He's had a building collapse on him, been caught in a flashover, everything.
Last one, he got caught in a backdraft, blown out the front door. I mean, I remember coming around a corner, and him and his nozzleman are laying out in the street. I'm like, my God. And he gets up, he's pretty well singed up, and he's back in the building. And I go, how many more does he have? What's left? And he was a legend in that regard, a hell of a fireman, great fire officer. And he was the type of guy, and I know we've talked about this before, when the shit was hitting the fan and you're looking at the companies coming down the street, I know you can relate this as a chief. You're looking for that 1 or 2 companies that are going to get this done. They're going to make that turn down the hallway and get this thing and, put it in a headlock and make this go away. And he was one of them. His company, he worked as a captain when I was a battalion in Jersey City in the 2nd. He was with Squad 4. And when the squad was coming down the block, I'm looking on him like, Mike, I got something for you. And whatever it was, he took care of it. Another great guy, yes.
Well, he is, because he's one of those guys, he wants the hardest job on a fire ground every time.
Absolutely. Another guy that set an example and raised the bar. He really did.
Yeah, really. It's great when those people come into an organization and actually can raise the level of performance of everybody around them if they allow it to happen. So Yeah, man, I'm excited about that, about talking about some of these guys. I'm actually thinking of two or three other people right now, but I don't even want to bring it up because I want to just stay focused on where we're going with this. But what is it about today's fire service that you see that you may feel is a sign that we're going in a right or a wrong direction? And I'll actually set this up a little bit better by saying this. I see right now, as an example, that right now there seems to be a push for leadership training. And I remember when I was younger, we never had people come into our organization and provide training. You were one of the first. When I got into the training division, I remember you came over and you did large area rope search training for us. Up to that point, the only instructors that I feel like we had come in, they were because we had mandatory training we had to do.
Right.
But it seems like a lot more people are bringing instructors like you, as an example, in to say, hey, we want 3 days of training with our officers on this topic. So I think that's a good thing, obviously. But do you see anything right now compared to the fire service you knew that you say, hey, this is a good direction, this one maybe not?
Well, I mean, to your point, there's no doubt I'm seeing that departments across the country are bringing in, for lack of a better word, outsiders, just to get another perspective on things, to share a thought or idea. Not that that department is stale or stagnant, but just to bring maybe a fresh thought in, whether they wrap their arms around some of the things that you're saying. But they'll take something. I guarantee it'll take something from you. And like you said, we never had that years ago. We never had any outsiders come in. It was always, this is our way, pretty much put up the wall or learn from within. But, as the challenges mounted, and, I talked about this quite a bit in most recent days, when we got our high-rise population grew on the waterfront, we couldn't go from within because we just didn't have the experience with it. So, it was important to seek out information, intel, instructors that have seen this before, have done this before, to bring that in so we could wrap our arms around what was measurable based on our staffing and our resources, and then, and only then, make it our own. To your point, leadership training, we never had that before. There was none of that before. I mean, I think when we were, the old bibliography book list for promotional exams, it might have been a leadership book from IFSTA, right, which, good series of books, but, you couldn't wrap your arms around the pages. You really couldn't relate to a story. Right. So, I mean, to bring people in like that, emotionally yourself, and this is where, again, I complimented you when we first opened up. This is the type of information where you have to bring it to the table because it's something that, even though we know, we talk about it, we hear about it, maybe you see it in print, you have to have somebody come in and bring it in on the same level and talk the talk that you experience. Like, whether it's the mentoring program or whether it's, the people skills in dealing with the public, whatever it may be, to kind of say, what you're doing is good, but let me tell you, maybe there might be a different way, maybe not necessarily a better way, but let me give you like another tool on how to deal with public or dealing with another agency or just dealing with a subordinate firefighter who has a couple little challenges that you don't want to squash it. Maybe you just want to kind of bolster him a little bit.
All right.
And I'm glad that that's happening, and I'm seeing more of that over the course of traveling, and I hope it continues. And maybe it's not maybe it's not you, it's somebody else, but just look outside your own backyard and see what's going on over the fence and bring somebody in. You're going to get something. I guarantee you're going to get something. Invest in that. It's a great return on the investment.
Our whole life, we've been taught that experience is the best teacher. Mm-hmm. And experience is a great teacher. But in an industry like the fire service, it's not the best teacher. Other people's experience is the best teacher, because think about it. I mean, we are so great at collecting information. We have fatality reports for every line of duty death. So for us not to say, well, and I can't even tell you, there's been quite a few times I would read a fatality report and say, this is like this particular structure in our organization. So let's go do a drill right now on this, because now we know what went wrong there, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen here. Yeah. Even you guys are a perfect example. The in Massachusetts, the cold storage fire.
Yeah. Wow.
It was probably months after that cold storage fire. You guys had one just outside the Holland Tunnel. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, sure.
And lessons learned from that incident, you
Yeah.
implemented to this one because
Yeah.
we didn't want that to happen again.
Yeah, that was freaky. You're talking about the Worcester Fire when the 6 firefighters were killed in Worcester, Mass. And
Yeah.
I think it was almost a year later. We had a cold storage warehouse, downtown at the Holland Tunnel. And the crazy part about that, after that fire, a couple of guys did some research. It was exactly the same architect that built the building in Worcester. He had built the same building in Jersey.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't know.
yeah, that's amazing. And we knew that we found that out later. And even talking about it now, the hair on my neck stands up a little bit because, we had a couple May days there. We lucked out. We got, a couple people, out of the building, but the same challenges that Worcester had, we just, they made a left, we made a right. It was lucky that we didn't have a significant, loss of life in that same exact building. Yeah.
And speaking of lessons learned, maybe we could talk about one of the incidents, by the way, that we talked about in Common Valor. For example, the door chalk incident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you mind telling that story? Because what I remember about that story was you saying initially, hey, this is going to be a piece of cake. And then you talked about what happened.
I've never said that ever again, at an incident. I never said the word, this is going to be a piece of cake, because I got bit in the ass on one. Yeah, I remember you and I talking about that. The short of the long is I was a captain. I just got promoted. I was assigned I was working at Engine 7, which was in our 3rd Battalion. And I remember this pretty clearly. We came in, it was a still alarm for a car fire. Car well involved, not a big deal, pretty much an everyday event. And we got the car pretty much knocked down. PD's got the street shut down, and one of the members of the company says, "Hey, Cap." I go, "Yeah." "Take a look." And I look over some of the buildings, from a block away, and I could see this what looks like a column of smoke. It was like a hazy night. And I got on the radio real quick, and I remember saying, "Engine 7 fire dispatch, you're getting a box of report of a fire in the area of?" And they said, "Yeah, we're putting it out now." And I said, "Put us in service. We're jumping on it. We're 2 blocks away." Took the initiative. The car was out, so I was content with that. And we turned the corner, and it was a good top floor fire and a 3-story brick, a row of bricks. Top floor going pretty good. And I had a probationary firefighter with me and a senior member, and of course I had my pump chauffeur. And it was venting out beautifully, out at the back. I could see it, the glow. I could see it licking up, from my distance coming in. And I remember to the pro because his eyes were as big as saucer plates because I put him on the nozzle that night for that tour. And I said, "John," I think his name was John. I said, "John, this is going to be a walk in the park. It's already vented out the back. We're going to come up to the top floor. We're just going to push it out the back." And he looked at me and he had all the confidence in the world at that moment because I was the captain. And we stretched up and, we stretched dry. We got, it was a couple rooms deep. So I remember forcing the front door off the public hallway. And I remember we immediately picked up another door a few feet in. Unknowns to me at the time, it was a closet. It was like a little narrow hallway. So I remember going past the 2 doors. We had to make a right. We stopped. We had control of the door to those 2 rooms that were involved and calling for water and calling for water and then calling for water. And the Engine 7 chauffeur was saying, "Cap, its line is charged." And obviously what had happened, not only did the apartment door from the public hallway close on the line, that second door into the narrow hallway from the closet closed on the line. So I had it pinched by 2 different doors. And I remember we had like a tiny bit of water, just touching the ceiling, and it was rolling. And as the probationary member came back on top of me, and he was pretty upset, obviously, yelling and screaming. And all I could say to him, because he was right here in my face, I'm in his ear, I go, "Just keep the line flowing." And I'm trying to get to my radio, to give a mayday. I couldn't get to it because he's on top of me. And, it's one of those moments, the mask is all going yellow and orange. You could feel the heat pushing on you. And by the grace of God, a member from 15 engine, 2nd due engine, can hear the probie yelling and screaming. And I'm just trying to, just keep it flowing. I'm just trying to get to my radio. I knew what the problem was, because when he pushed me back, we actually pinned ourselves against it. We couldn't get the doors open because they swung the opposite way. And a gentleman by the name of, talk about another great guy, Pete Greasy, captain of 15, he heard us. He heard all the yelling and screaming from the probie, and he just kept pushing. We were like leaning. It was like one of these accordion things on the doors, because he was trying to push in, and we were leaning back. He saw the line. He knew what was going on. And whether he came in, I don't know what he did. Pete's a big guy. He pushed it enough to the point where he pushed us forward, which I said, oh, we're in serious trouble, but enough that water quickly got into the line. We got enough up there, all right, to darken it a little bit, all right, and we rolled out the door. The line was now whipping around. He passed us, crawled on top of us. We're out to the hall. We picked up the line, and him and his company took care of the 2 rooms. I grabbed my guy. We scrambled, down the steps we go through the other companies that are coming up. And the both of us looked like, sunburned, steam. And I remember sitting on the back step of the apparatus, looking at him, talking to him, trying to calm him down, explain what had happened, and saying to myself, once I felt he was comfortable, just to leave him for a second. I remember walking down the street going, why? What did I do wrong? What happened here? Wow. How did I get myself into that position? And it came simply down to the fact of a dry line with a door closing on the line. And ever since then, I talked about controlling the door, chalking the door, explaining the story. I think we even talked about it maybe in probie school, if I'm not mistaken, when you were with me. And it was something that was, it took me years to even tell my wife about that story. It was, to me, it was close. It was, I would think we were 30 seconds, 60 seconds away from getting seriously burned. And thank God we just kept the water moving enough just to keep it off us. It was rolling nicely at the back, thank God. But it was close. Honestly, it was very close.
And that's why I wanted you to share that story, is because you did tell that to us when I was brand new on the job. And because of that, we went to our firehouse after the academy one day. We're still in the academy, and we actually asked us, I don't even know who it was. I think it was a carpenter or maybe training officer. I don't know who it was. We asked if we can get some chalks for the door, and they cut them for us right there and gave them. We all put 2 of them in our pockets because of that lesson. You learn from other people's mistakes or experiences. And then you just said something that I just talked about yesterday when I was out in Texas. You said it took me years to tell my wife that story.
Yeah.
I want to take a minute and just talk about this, because I used to come home, and if I had those incidents that you just, they weigh a little bit on you. You saw something, you went through a challenging time, you had that close encounter. I never wanted to tell my wife about it. I would just come home and it would be weighing on my mind. I'd be thinking about it, and she, how was your day? It was all right. Yet maybe 2 weeks later, I'd be out with a bunch of firefighters and our wives, and we would just be talking about what happened that day a couple of weeks ago. Like, and then this happened, that happened, and what you did and that. And I remember her one time saying to me, how come you never talk to me about your days the way that you talk to them? And I just said, because they understand. And it's hard for me to want to bring this home, because the last thing I want you to think is that every day is like that. Yeah. That every day I go to work, I don't want you to wonder, am I coming home? Yeah.
I want to be, I'm pretty accurate with this. I don't think my wife knew about that story, and even some of the other stories that we talked about in your book, until she read your book.
Really?
And then brought it to my attention. And I responded the same way that you did. I didn't want to burden you with this. I didn't want you to worry about this. Everything's okay. I learned a lot. It was fine. It was just a little mishap. But I don't think she knew about it until she read the book, your book.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, so when you reach a leadership position as a tour commander, like you were, like I was, I would meet these young firefighters. I'd meet their wives, or their fiancés. They'd bring them in, and mostly their wives were, and husbands too. But I always made it a point to take that minute and get to know them. And I found myself at some point in that conversation, if we're all out at a party somewhere, if it's at the fire station, if it's at a community event, wherever it is, the firehouse picnic every year, I'd always make it a point to say, listen, I just want you to know that your husband is my top priority when I come to work every day. Every decision that I make, I have one thought in mind. I'm getting him home to you at the end of every shift. Something to that effect, I would say. Maybe not like that to a brand new person, but I just wanted them to know that the man that your husband or wife works under cares about them and understands that that they have a family too. And one of the things that I loved doing was when I would walk around our stations, we have multiple stations like you do, and I'd run into a firefighter here and there in the stations. I'd always take that 1 minute just to say, how's your family? How's your wife? And know them by name, by the way. How's Karen doing? And how'd Susan do in her soccer game last week? Things like that. And it always made them feel like, you know what? Hey, man, this guy, like he connects with us. He's one of us. Now, at the same time, I'm holding you accountable on the fire ground.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Yeah, that's a great quality and trait, I think, of a boss. Taking the time to just, before you bring in the duties and responsibilities of the day, how's the family? I saw the article about your son and hit the home run or whatever it may be. And that resonates, that opens the door for further conversation. And they realize that you're vested in them, not only as a boss, but as a friend, at the end of the day. Now, a great quality and trait, I think, of a fire officer. How's the family? I mean, think about the value of that question. How's your family?
It carries so much weight. It really, I mean, in a positive way, it's such a great thing, because I loved when a firefighter would take their helmet off and they had a picture of their wife and children or husband inside their fire helmet. And I would say, are those your kids? Or even in their locker, how old are they now? They still playing that sport?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the picture in the locker, the kids are 8 and 9 and now they're in college.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you kidding me? They're in college. Yeah. And you'd have these great conversations.
Yeah.
So I've been there. I wanted to end with something that might help some people too, is 3 letters that I learned from you that helped me on every single fire ground as an incident commander. And it helped me in life, because I utilize this in life, which is RER. Review.
Oh, God. Yeah, great.
Right. Review, evaluate, and revise.
Yeah.
And on every fire ground where I was ever an incident commander, there's always a point where I would stop by and say, let me just review what we're doing, evaluate, is this the right tactic? And if not, revise it. But you know what? I implement that in my life regularly, to where, I've identified something. Actually, this is a eureka moment. I've identified something really recently, and I don't think I came up with it at all. I'm sure plenty of people thought about this before me, but one of the things I just realized was what makes people happy. And this is it in one word: progress. Progress makes people happy. What it is whatever you're trying to accomplish in life, say you want to write a book, you want to get promoted, whatever it is in life, if you're making progress towards that goal, you tend to be happier than when you're not. At least that's in my life. So I take that, what I learned from you, that RER, and I sit here and I think, well, first of all, the most important thing is, let me identify, what is it that I want? That's the most important part. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? For example, 3 times while I'm talking to you, my kids open a door because I was in Texas for the past 3 days. I just got back and they want to, play a game. So they open a door looking at me, and I'm giving them the signal, 2 minutes, 2 more minutes. Like that's I want that family time, right? It's important for me. So every day I'll say to myself, Am I getting that? If not, I need to reevaluate and revise in order to achieve that. And I'm working on a new book right now. Do you apply that in your life too, RER, or was it just a fireground thing?
I think both. I mean, I'll tell you the story. I don't know if I ever told you this. The RER, did I ever tell you where I got that from?
No.
Where I picked that up? The legendary Chief Alan Brunacini.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. He wrote a book in the 70s called Fire Command. And I remember reading it in the late 70s and early 80s. And he had like this plan, believe it or not, it kind of helped me put together like our little approach on how to handle a structure fire for promotional exams, en route, arrival, all the things we've talked about before. And he had in his table of contents, and I'm reading his kind of segue of how when you get there, you do this, when you arrive, you do that, you do your on scene, size up and report. He had in one of his steps, RER. And I remember reading this. It had to be, late 70s, early 80s. And I'm like, my God, that makes great sense. At one point, once the companies are assigned and working, you got your management, outline and divisions, groups, sectors, whatever the hell you do. You have to seek progress reports from these guys and gals. And if necessary, review what they're saying, evaluate it. And if you have to, revise your incident action plan, right, to now meet the new challenge based on what you saw and what they told you. That goes way back in Mr. Brunacini, a legend in his time. I mean, a guy that's very well missed greatly.
Yeah.
And that was his. I just took it and I applied it to promotionals. I applied it to, working in the street. And of course, like as you just mentioned, the example, of course, you apply it to your life on a daily basis with family, friends, whatever the challenges are at home. Yeah, that was Mr. Brunacini's, not mine.
I went in, I was walking down the hall at FDIC one time, and I see, you could see who's speaking in each room on the poster outside the door. And I see, oh, Brunacini's here right now. I need to go see him. I open it up. The class had just begun, and I sit in the back. He's on his opening slide. I'm like, this is perfect. It's his opening slide. I mean, I'm going to see his whole presentation. I have a notebook with me already. I open it up and I sit down to take notes. And he's doing a typical fireside chat. He's sitting on a chair. It's very intimate, even though it's a large classroom. An hour and 45 minutes into the class, he's still on the opening slide. And it's a mesmerizing class. You're thinking, you learn so much. It's got nothing to do with that. He actually allowed the class to kind of flow in whatever direction it went in based on the conversation he was having with everybody. And I thought, man, one day I hope to get there.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty awesome. He told some great stories.
He was a different person. And he was the only guy, if you remember, who taught at a venue like that, FDIC or Firehouse, that could teach in a flowered Hawaiian shirt.
Yes.
We all had to be in jackets and ties and, all look prim and proper. He walked in like he was going to leave the class and go to the beach and have a margarita.
Yeah, that's true.
He was allowed to do that, and rightfully so. He earned every bit of that.
Rightfully so.
He was on a different plane. He really was.
My brother, when I was assigned as the training officer, I had this conversation with my brother, and he said, listen, you're in a position where you can make great change in our organization. I said, what kind of change can I make? He says, well, what do you think we need? I said, Joe, we have 4 different groups. It's like we have 4 different departments. I don't even know where to start. I go, we don't even have any fire-related SOPs. He goes, why don't you write them? I said, I don't know how to write them. He goes, Frank, you go to Phoenix Fire Department's website, print theirs out, put your name on top. You just wrote one. So we share information in the fire service, right? And, and they set the standard in a lot of areas that way, especially with customer service because of his example, or community service, whatever you want to call it. But, I'm glad we had a chance to actually.
Yeah, he was definitely a guy that was ahead of his time in that field. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Without question. Listen, Chief, I appreciate that you took the time to come on here and talk with me and our listeners and share a little bit about your background, your passion, what you believe in, and how can people get a hold of you for either promotional or your books or speaking?
Oh, a couple opportunities. I'm on Facebook like most people at Mike Terpak Fire Service Training, Instagram at Mike Terpak. Probably the two easiest places through social media to grab me to send a message. Emails are posted there on the Facebook page, but Facebook, Mike Terpak Fire Service Training Consulting, and Instagram, just at Mike Terpak, is probably the simplest and easiest way to reach out for a conversation. Whatever we can help you with, or if I can't help, I can point you in the direction of a lot of great people. Obviously, yourself being one of them.
Well, I appreciate that, Chief. Thank you so much. Tell your wife I said thank you also for letting us borrow you for this long.
Oh, no problem. Give my best to your wife and family. The same things. Tell Joe. I haven't seen Joe such a long time. Tell
You
Joe
know,
I said hello.
I'm going to see him tomorrow, so I'll tell him that for sure.
Yeah, please do. Great guy.
All right, Chief. Thank you very much. You take care of yourself.
You too, Frank. Thanks so much.